The Whitney Reynolds Show is supported by the Auto Barn Mazda of Evanston and Chicago. The Auto Barn Mazda, where driving matters. iLearn Center, intelligent learning for children 6 weeks to 5 years, helping our young learners become leaders. And the Respiratory Health Association, raising funds and awareness for lung disease research and programs. Special thanks to Kevin Kelly with At Properties, Pearl's Southern Comfort, Chicago Andrea Creative, Mazda, Modern Classics Furniture.
You're watching The Whitney Reynolds Show. Today's program, Syria, a week before the chemical attacks, is just that. Sit-down interviews with Syrian natives who open up about the civil war that's happening in their homeland. This was taped 1 week before the chemical attacks made national headlines and the United States launched missiles into Syria. This perspective is real, raw, and a true testament that help was needed long before these stories made national headlines. Why wasn't all media covering a genocide happening in real time? Who's helping the locals impacted by these attacks? And how can we all get involved? Let's take a look. Our first guest is the founder and executive director of the Syrian Community Network. Based in Chicago, she has seen firsthand the needs of Syrians and is here to explain what exactly is happening in Aleppo. Welcome to the show, Suzanne.
Thank you for having me, Whitney.
So we're talking about Aleppo, and we've heard this on the news, we've heard it, we've seen it in the paper, but what exactly is happening? Because it's one of those, people just say this word, like they're throwing it out there, but what is going on?
Well, before we discuss Aleppo, we should really look at what happened in Syria. Syria right now is known as the worst humanitarian crisis of our lifetime. But we need to look back at the year 2011 when the Arab Spring started in Egypt and in Tunis, when young people went to the street demanding change, asking for reforms, asking for democracy. And a lot of young people in Syria did the same thing. They went to the streets, they organized peacefully, they had sit-ins, and they were asking for reforms from the government. But unfortunately, the Syrian government retaliated with extreme brutality on the people. And some of the earlier uprisings happened in the city of Daraa and the city of Homs, where young people were shot. The government used snipers to intimidate people, to keep them inside. And so we have to really understand the root cause of what happened in order for us to understand what happened in Aleppo. And what happened in Aleppo over the summer and with the siege of eastern Aleppo was really very heartbreaking to see the hospitals destroyed, schools, whole neighborhoods. And when we think about the refugee crisis, we need to understand that the refugees are leaving because they are being bombed every day. Their schools, their mosques, their churches are being bombed, and the hospitals. And so the infrastructure of the whole neighborhood is gone, so they end up leaving their homes and become refugees.
So going back to where it started, you're saying back in 2011, there were people went to the streets, young people saying, you know, we need a little bit of change.
Yes.
And instead of it happening peacefully, the government decided to take action, and that's really where it started.
Yes, you see that in Daraa there were some young boys that were taken by government forces and they were tortured, and the government, when the parents demanded that their children be returned, they said, go back and forget about your children, and if you can't make new children, we'll come to your homes and we'll make new children for you. So it was complete disrespect of the people and the culture. Young people were imprisoned, many were targeted, physicians were targeted. Since the start of the crisis in 2011, over 700 physicians or medical healthcare workers were targeted and killed in Syria. And this goes against the Geneva Conventions.
Is this because they didn't want the doctors helping people?
Well, doctors are seen as leaders in the community. So when you lose a doctor, you lose all of the services that this doctor can provide for the neighborhood. When you lose a hospital, someone who is pregnant and is about to deliver will think about, well, where can I take care of myself? Right. They end up leaving their home and living in another neighborhood, and that's what starts the whole refugee process of people becoming refugees into a host country because they're looking for services and support.
Now, you are from Syria.
Yes.
When did you leave?
So I came to Chicago in 1982 at the age of 10 with my parents. I'm not a refugee, but I'm an immigrant. I'm a proud immigrant. And it was difficult to adjust early on in those early days, but we had a lot of help. We had a lot of community support, and that's what really inspired me to start my organization, the Syrian Community Network.
Did they come over here because it was dangerous then, or was Syria a good place to live then?
In 1982, there was a first uprising by the father, the Hafiz al-Assad, the current president's father. There was an attempted coup, and he retaliated by crushing people, and there was a siege of the city of Hama where he surrounded the city for 40 days. Over 40,000 people were killed, many people were imprisoned and tortured, and at that time my parents just felt that this wasn't a good place for my sisters and I to grow up in, and so they decided to come back to the U.S.
So how does it go from 2011, these initial, the government taking action, to now such drastic things we're seeing of, like you were saying, bombings happening left and right? How did it escalate to this level?
Well, I think in the eyes of the regime, they wanted to crush the rebellion, to end whatever was all of the asks that the young people were making for reforms. They wanted to put a halt to that, and with the help of Russia and Iran and others that came in to crush the people, they were able to take over many cities. They destroyed hospitals and schools and infrastructure of neighborhoods, and as a result, you see this refugee crisis.
And when you say they, who are you speaking about?
I'm speaking of the Assad regime, the current president, and his government, with the help of Russians and Iranians, and as well as now you have these fanatics, ISIS, and all of these other groups that sprung up because you have a void in leadership, and when there's chaos, you have these crazies that come up and form groups and battalions, and they think they're going to come and save the world, and they're not.
So would you say that this is a totally different area than where you came from at this moment?
Yes, it's. I'm really shocked to see that even the international community is just so quiet about everything that's been happening in Syria. And we saw the pictures of little Aylan Kurdi washed up on shore, and then again we saw last summer's picture of little Amran, and he was sitting in that ambulance, rubbing his face, and the whole world reacted, was very upset, but then nothing happened. Mm-hmm. And this is, I think, what's so upsetting and what's so disheartening about the whole situation.
Yeah, when we were doing our research for the show, it was breaking my heart as I was looking through, because sometimes you just see this as a big thing, like, oh, what can I do? But when you actually look at those faces of the people that are being impacted, it's really, each person has a story.
Yes. And we see here in Chicago, we're receiving some of the Syrian refugees as they're being resettled. In my organization, we are helping them in their adjustment. And so there's about 145 families here in Chicago, refugee families. So anyone who wants to help a family make a difference, who feels really passionate about Syria, can reach out to us and can help a family, mentor a family, and help them in their adjustment.
That is wonderful. And your organization is?
The Syrian Community Network.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you, Whitney.
Next up, we have a Syrian immigrant that moved to the States back in 2000 in search of the American dream. Welcome to the show, Faraz.
Thank you.
With everything that you've been seeing on the news, and you actually, have gone back to Syria at times, is it a completely different area than how you remember it?
I was looking, I say, oh my God, this is not my country. There is too much changed. People they have a big fear. They always they suffer for what's happening. Many people I know, they have no place to live now. Wherever you work, it's still not enough. This is for safe area like Damascus. And in other areas, it's not, you cannot go anywhere because there is bombing everywhere, there is problem everywhere, and you cannot do anything.
And you brought your children to the United States 3 years ago.
Yes.
Do you feel like, based on that timing and what's happened in the last 3 years, that you got them out just in time?
Yes. You know, like 3 years ago, I mean, what the problem happened in Syria like 5 years. That's after 2 years because I apply for them and I bring them over here, take time. Take me like this 2 years.
One of the things you said prior to our taping is you pointed out those buttons that you're wearing, the pins, the United States flag and the Syrian flag.
Yes.
What does that mean for you wearing both of those?
I'm very blessed and glad because I am American citizen. And honestly, I love United States. United States, it's very, very, very great place. And honestly, from inside my heart, I can say people in the United States, they very, very like, I don't know what word I have to say about them. They have a good heart, they have a big heart. They understand, you know, how far the United States from Middle East, from Syria, but still, they feel us, they support us, they understand what's happening because we are human, right?
That's right.
We are a human, we have a right like you, like anybody, right? And this is for United States. And the United States give me a lot of things. I fit my kids from here, you know. Thank God, I know God bless the United States. Syria, you know, Syria, I born in Syria, I'm from Syria. Of course, I love my country. I hope like it will be like safe and peace over there for everybody to go back and make it like maybe what kind heaven, make it like everything new, help each other like before, have the happiness we lost there because of this war, what happened over there. That's why I love both.
Well, I love
and
that
both
you,
close to my heart, you see?
Yes.
Close to my heart.
I love that. And I love that you're still holding out for hope for Syria.
You know what? Wherever we have people like people in the United States, we always have a hope. I know all of you here, if you ask everybody, why are you coming over here? You're coming over here for something very great because you're coming for a human, for people, for you believe these people have a right, these people have a right to be in life, have a right to be in, like, feel like safe, have a right to have them kids have the education. That's why I appreciate all of you, and this is making me feel like more happy and have more hope, and I hope everything will get like better.
That's good. Well, thank you for coming on. Dedicating his time and resources to the people in devastated Aleppo is what our next guest is all about. From sniper fire to bomb victims, Dr. Saul has led 5 medical missions helping people from his homeland. He joins us now with more. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
Most people are trying to get out of Syria, and you're running back in to help people. Why?
I don't think about it. People ask me this question all the time, and I do it intuitively. I went to Syria more than a dozen times and to Aleppo 5 times. And the last time, there was a few events that happened in Aleppo that led me and a couple of my friends from Chicago, who are physicians also, to go to the city. There was a bombing of a hospital in the city, and one of the last pediatricians died. One of the doctors in Chicago, he's named Dr. John Kaler, he's a pediatrician, called me and he said, I'd like to go and help the children of Aleppo. And also I had a friend who's orthopedic surgeon at Northwestern University, a second generation Syrian American, called Dr. Sam Al-Attar, called me and he said, I would like to go to Aleppo to help. And at that time there was only one road leading to the city, and the city was surrounded in 3 ways by the government. And this road, they call it Road to Hell, because it was bombed every day and people were dying in the street. Leaving or going into the city was the most dangerous road probably in the world. But we made it and we went into the city. I remember that when we went into the road, the driver of the van told us, you have to say your final prayer because you may not make it. I did, and my friends did, and then he sped into the road, and you see these craters of missiles in the road. You see upside down buses that are burned completely, and car wrecks, and there was this strong stench of death, of decomposing bodies, of individuals who died while they're in vehicles, and no one comes and dare to bury them out. We made it safely, fortunately, to the city, and we went directly to the hospital, M10 hospital. And it's amazing that this hospital was built underground for protection of doctors and nurses and patients, because it was also bombed multiple times.
Wow.
But you know, this is, I think, our duty as doctors and humanitarians. And if I don't do it, who will do it? I always tell my children that we live in very comfortable life in Chicago. I have access to the best medical care in my hospital, Christ Advocate in Oakland. We spend millions of dollars to save one life. Over there, people die because there is no antibiotics or there is no surgeon in town, and we have to do our share.
Is there a faith component for you to do this?
There's always a faith component. I believe it's my duty as a human more than anything else, and as a physician, to help people who are in need. Dr. John Kaler is a Catholic who went with me. I'm a Muslim. But I think this is a universal faith value. Doctors always have been trying to help in the combat, in war, in conflicts throughout the ages, no matter what is their faith. But I believe that we have to give back to the people who helped us. I came from Syria. I graduated from Damascus University. I'm a very successful physician in Chicago, and I think it's my duty to give back.
When you're over there and you're helping different people, have you run into anybody that you know, families that you have known from your past?
I go usually to areas in north of Syria. I'm from a city called Homs, which is in the center of Syria. I've seen many physicians who graduated from the same school I did. Some of them are working in these areas, and I've seen them in Aleppo and other places. And it's very surreal experience, because you never expect to see your classmates now in a war situation like it's in Syria. Many of my colleagues also are working in areas that are under siege right now, which I cannot access. Yes.
So when's your next trip to go back over?
Every few months I try to go in medical mission. In January we had a medical mission to Jordan. As you know, there are many refugees in Jordan, Lebanon, and Turkey and Greece. And my organization, the Syrian American Medical Society, have been sending medical missions to all of these countries. So we don't only just medical missions to Syria, but to the neighboring countries that have Syrian refugees.
Are the missions mainly to help people that are caught in the gunfire, the bombings, or are you going over just to help people with daily things that come up with health?
No, most of the patients I see have chronic conditions like we have here. So you have patients who have heart disease, asthma, COPD, cancer. These are people who are living in their cities and villages and neighborhoods, and they require health care. We have children who need vaccination, women who need birth, dialysis patients who need dialysis. So all kinds of patients that you see, but also you witness the most painful type of victims of war, which are the children and the civilians who are caught in the gunfire, who are pulled from the rubbles of their houses after it's being destroyed. And these are the most painful patients that I take care of. And their images and pictures stay with my mind. I always tell my family that it takes me a few weeks after I come back to recover from these stories and these pictures.
You really are a true humanitarian. Thank you for all you have done, and thanks for sharing your stories. I know that it's one of those things that probably is hard to go back mentally there, but you keep going back physically.
I think so. I think part of me is still there, and many of the physicians who went into Syria or to the refugee camps tell me the same thing, that they feel that there is a call for them to go back and to help these unfortunate individuals. We are blessed in this city to have everything, abundance of everything, and we have to do our share in helping the people in need.
Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Joining us is a woman who had enough of just hearing about the news in Syria and decided to take action. On Facebook, that is. Becky Carroll is here to tell us what we can do to help with the crisis here at home. Welcome, Becky.
Thanks for having me.
You know, today's topic has been a lot for people to digest, I'm sure, because it's a lot of information thrown at them. But you saw everything that was on the news about Aleppo and said, I got to do something.
You know, it was kind of like there was such a lack of attention in the news and among world leaders. That's what kind of pushed my co-founder and I, Wendy Whittam, to really do something about it. When you see a genocide happening in real time on social media, but world leaders and media are not really picking up on it, it's frustrating, it's angering, especially as a mom. And we just felt compelled that we needed to channel that somehow, and that's how we decided to create Stand with Aleppo.
So what did you do? Because so many people they do see a lack of something, but I want our viewers, in case they are feeling like there's a gap somewhere, that you can actually make a huge difference here at home.
Yes, I think one, Wendy is a social media guru. I've been in political campaigns and public relations a long time, and I think we just had a quick vision we wanted to put together, which was basically, how do we tell the story? We needed to use social media channels, obviously, but we created a hashtag that we thought could resonate with people, make it easy to understand. We wanted to use a visual of one of the children that had been impacted by the atrocities there, and create that platform to make it easy for people who we thought felt like we did, but didn't yet have that platform to communicate their frustration. So after a very good friend of ours, we became friends over social media. His name's Dr. Omar. He was the last neurosurgeon in Aleppo. And one day his hospital got bombed multiple times. We lost contact with him. And we just became so frustrated at that moment in time. Over the course of a couple days, we came up with this concept. And when we did launch it, I don't think we expected to get the kind of reaction we did, but I think we realized that there were people like Wendy and I all over the world that wanted to speak up on behalf of these innocent families and children.
So what is the hashtag?
Hashtag is Stand with Aleppo. Within about 3 months, we had reached well over about 1.5 billion people through that hashtag alone. And what was so wonderful, it wasn't just us, it was people in countries all over the world who were using it to communicate their own frustration, their own anger, to use their voice, to lend a voice to all these innocent families and children in Aleppo. People were holding rallies under the banner that we didn't have anything really to do with, but again, it created an umbrella almost for all these different people and voices from across the world to engage around this one hashtag that really, I think, exemplified and help capture the frustration people had.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what does Stand with Aleppo mean to you?
It means to me, I think, especially as a mother, because Wendy and I were both moms, and when we first launched it, we invited many of our fellow moms who we thought were very like-minded like us to say, if we were in this situation, wouldn't we want other people across the world to stand up and be a voice for us if we were being attacked by our own government and their foreign allies? And I think that, so for us, we're trying to give a voice and say we stand side by side with the women and the fathers and the children who did nothing to bring this on themselves, but every single day, I'd say every single night, go to bed not knowing if they're going to wake up the next morning. And that was the reality they were facing. So for us, we're like, we stand with you, we're a voice for you, we're going to speak up for you.
Did you have any personal connections to Aleppo before this?
None. I, like Wendy, had been very active in social justice issues all throughout our lives, mine going back to my teen years. And she and I, about a year before Aleppo was under siege, we had gotten involved in getting to know Syrian refugee groups here in Chicago after the story of that little boy who washed up on the shores of Turkey along Kurdi. And I think once that happened, it enraged people across the world because it gave one face to the crisis in Aleppo. And that's how we started to engage with the community.
And that was early on. That was...
Yeah, so that was about almost 2 years ago when that happened. But it was in August to September of 2016 when Aleppo became under siege. And it really became kind of the rallying point for people across the world to finally stand up and say enough was enough. Because Assad had started gassing his own people with chemical attacks back in 2011, and it just kind of fell off the radar screen. But I think after the little boy, Alon Kurdi, washed up on shore, it re-sparked interest. But then when Aleppo became under siege and we saw war crimes happening before us where doctors and hospitals are getting bombed and children literally being blown up to bits, it was at a point where I think it was too much for people to take, and they needed a way to stand up and talk on their behalf.
I am so thankful you created this group. Is it something that people still can get involved with?
Absolutely. We have right now, our goal was not to just say, everyone under the sun, come and join. It was like, if you really want to dedicate some time to lend your voice, to be active on social media, to connect with people in your network, they could sign up with our Stand with Aleppo Facebook group, where we would always do a series of calls to action week to week to give something tangible for people to do. And that's created the steady drumbeat of activity. And people are still active in doing things today. Unfortunately, we would love to close up this Facebook group and move on, because it would mean the crisis is over, but it's far from over.
So thank you so much for doing what you did.
Oh, thank you, and to the entire team of folks who helped make Stand with Aleppo possible.
Today's topic was tough, and these stories of such pain and suffering are real and happening as we speak. We understand there is so much more to the Syrian story. We want you to remember, with anything that seems so dark, even just a glimmer of light goes a long way.
The Whitney Reynolds Show is supported by the Autobarn Mazda of Evanston and Chicago, the Autobarn Mazda, where driving matters, I Learn Center, intelligent learning for children 6 weeks to 5 years, helping our young learners become leaders, and the Respiratory Health Association, raising funds and awareness for lung disease research and programs. Special thanks to Kevin Kelly with At Properties, Pearls Southern Comfort, Chicago Andrea Creative, Mazda, Modern Classics Furniture.
You've been watching Syria a week before the chemical attacks. For more information on today's show, visit WhitneyReynolds.com.